Again, my name is Richard Pascoe. I'm the chairman and CEO of Histogen. I've joined the company fairly recently. Joining me here on the stage is our founder, chief scientific officer, who also leads our business development activities, Dr. Gail Naughton. So we'll tag team here a bit today during the Q&A. Just a brief overview. We're a privately held San Diego-based company focused in the area of regenerative medicine. We have a proprietary manufacturing process which allows us to produce various products that can be used across a variety of different therapeutic and/or aesthetic applications. Specifically, what we have is a product offering that allows the body to stimulate its own stem cell growth, and to do that, to regenerate tissue, grow hair, and to do a number of other therapeutic applications that we'll speak here in more detail about. When you think about the process in which we manufacture our product, there's really two byproducts that come from that. The first is what we refer to as our CCM, or cell conditioning matrix, and this is sort of the starter material for all of our aesthetic, skin care, and hair growth opportunities. And then further downstream in that process, we can produce a extracellular matrix which has potential application in areas such as wound healing, dermal fillers, bone repair, and cartilage repair, all of which we think can be exploited both from a clinical and downstream from a commercial opportunity perspective. We have a strong intellectual property portfolio around this. We protect what we've developed. And importantly, we already have our CCM product being used in the market through a partnership we've established both with Allergan. Allergan uses our growth factors in one of their dermal products that's sold under the Skin Medica line, and we expect to continue to grow along with that business and Allergan. Moreover, we've established a partnership with a Chinese company, Huapont. Huapont's a large multi-billion-dollar company that has interest in our program with respect to hair growth. And finally, we have another aesthetic partner up in Irvine, California, Hydrofacial. Hydrofacial is a medical device that's used in the aesthetic space to clean and remove dead skin and impurities from the skin. And our CCM product is used as a serum, which is infused back into the skin to provide clinical benefit. So we like to think of the company as having sort of a multifactorial opportunity to move forward. We have this base business in the aesthetics and cosmetic side. Now we turn our attention to how we can grow our business in the therapeutic side, focusing on things like hair growth, where we have a clinical program underway, as well as in the areas of extracellular matrix application with respect to a number of opportunities in wound healing, and as I mentioned earlier, cartilage repair and bone. This slide just sort of depicts where we are with each of those programs. We'll talk about them in the Q&A a little more here as we move forward. And then finally, I just want to point out that as we think about what the company has in front of it this year, clearly we want to finish up our phase 1 program in females and hair growth with our HSC 660 product. That database has just recently been locked, and we're analyzing that data. We do need to obtain some additional regulatory guidance before we move that program forward into phase 2, starting as early as later this year. As you can imagine, there's a fairly intensive manufacturing process that goes into producing these products, and as such, we have a very robust scale-up program that's underway. We do manufacture cosmetic and early clinical in our own facility in San Diego, but we also work with third parties to go beyond that in phase 2 and beyond. Ideally, we'll look to gear the company up for additional financing later this year, with an eye towards taking the company public in 2020 and beyond. So with that, Steve, I'll turn it over to you, and Gail and I will sort of trade off here in terms of Q&A.
Great, sounds
Thanks.
good. Yes, thank you for that introduction. I guess I'll just lob questions, and you guys can decide.
We've got it covered, yeah.
Who's most appropriate to take them. So Histogen has a pretty unique manufacturing process. So you're yielding multiple products here from essentially one process. So I think it would be helpful maybe to walk through that process and how it works, and ultimately just stepwise sort of what it entails.
Sure. We start with neonatal fibroblasts, and we develop master cell banks and working cell banks from that. So we have decades worth of good manufacturing ahead of us from that single source. The trick about our technology is that we learned that if you grow these cells under embryonic conditions of very low oxygen, 3% instead of 21%, and suspension culture, that within 24 hours they revert back to become multipotent stem cells. So they secrete the conditioned media at the same time as the extracellular matrix. So we basically go from roller bottles to a 3-liter system to expand the cells to a 10-liter system, and we're working on a 20-liter scale as well. Once the cells are established on the hypoxic conditions, we collect the media every day. We concentrate and clarify that media, and that is the basis for the Skin Medica product with Allergan and for hydrogel, hydrofacial as well. We further purify it for the HSC product. At the end of the process, we get rid of the cells, we get rid of the beads, and then we have the extracellular matrix that has the consistency at that time of like an egg white. And so we could use that as a filler. With that consistency, we've been able to go and concentrate it further for wound care and for orthopedics applications.
Okay, interesting. And on the CCM side, so you mentioned you concentrate down the media. It's obviously then applied in multiple products. So are there specific things then you're doing to the CCM after it's been concentrated? Are you adding things? Is there an involved process for each different product that it creates?
Well, not really. The clarified material that's just clarified, not concentrated, is the basis for the hydrofacial product. They add a thickener to it to get to the machine. The Allergan product is simply clarified, concentrated 10x. We send it to their formulation house, and they go and they formulate it into various creams and gels and things like that. The HSC 660, we take that concentrated product and we then go over a heparin sulfate column and various Q filters to get specifically the growth factors that are most associated with hair growth, to get rid of any impurities that are not associated with hair growth, and be able to make that product.
Okay. And I have a few questions, obviously, on that product. Maybe just before we get there, though, just from the standpoint of the CCM product, you have a partnership with Allergan. From the standpoint of just revenue to the business, how that business is growing, and how meaningful that is to you guys in the long term, if you could just touch on that.
Yeah, I'll take that. So I think it's important to note the company is in a very unique situation in the sense that we have these existing partnerships where our products are being used in marketed products, and that's primarily on the aesthetic side of the business. With Allergan, we signed a very attractive license deal, which we expect to grow and to expand upon in the years to come. And that allows us to sell to them at a transfer price and collect milestones down the road from the sales of their product as a way of generating revenue for the company and further validating the aesthetic and cosmetic applications. Beyond that, we also believe that there's tremendous opportunity in the retail skincare market, where we could take the CCM product and put it into any number of cosmetic type products that could treat the skin, the hair, and other things, and really tap a very large and growing luxury brand type of marketplace. And so that is obviously an area of opportunity that we will look to exploit later this year. I think, moreover, as we think about funding the company moving forward, clearly we'll need capital to grow the company and to do the things that we want to do on the therapeutic side of the equation. And we believe we can do that in large part through licensing transactions and business development opportunities on the aesthetic side. So as Gail pointed out, as you sort of work through this continuum, we have the base CCM product. We can purify that to becomes our HSC 660 product, which is in the hair growth arena. And then as we further move downstream with the ECM product coming out of the process, we can then further exploit that in a therapeutic fashion, primarily in the areas of, as I said, cartilage, bone, and skin wound healing.
Okay, great. So maybe that's a good transition into the most advanced program on the ECM side, which is for hair loss. So there are obviously a lot of maybe just sort of retail options for folks, whether they're shampoos and even in fact surgeries, hair transplants for hair loss as well. So I guess maybe just the key points of HSC 660. What are the advantages of that approach? And how
Sure, and just for clarity, HSC 660 is still on the CCM side of the ledger. But I think importantly, when you think about the current market in the hair loss product arena, it's just that. Those products like Propecia, Rogaine, for example, have been around for quite a while, very successful in their own right. But they really focus on preventing the loss of the hair. Whereas with HSC 660 and what we've seen in the clinic, both in men and women, and we've seen it in all areas of the scalp as well, both the temporal regions as well as the more traditional male pattern baldness, is that we're actually able to grow hair, and it's because we're generating, if you will, that hair growth through the application of our product. It's injected into the scalp, and then you're essentially attracting or promoting the body's own ability to grow stem cells and to regenerate, if you will, hair growth in the hair follicle. That's primarily the difference. Now, beyond that, in the clinic, what we've seen, and again, this is all early, we'll continue to explore that in future clinical trials, is that not only can we treat all areas of the scalp and have success there, but we've also seen success in both men and women, which is important as you think about the market segmentation and opportunities that present from a therapeutics point of view.
Great. So maybe just touching on the study in women that I believe you're in double-blind placebo-controlled phase 1 study there. Can you just tell us about that trial design, the key endpoints, and what you'd be looking ultimately to demonstrate in that study?
Sure. So we just recently completed the clinical trial phase of a phase 1 study in women. We studied 27 subjects at a single site. This is primarily a safety, efficacy, tolerability study, and I think it's fair to say throughout our clinical experience with this product, we've seen no adverse events or serious adverse events that would give us reason to want to think about moving this program forward. And moreover, I think they've been fairly mild and transient. This was a double-blind, randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial, and women who received product and/or placebo were subjected to a baseline assessment, and then following that, the injection of the product at beginning of the trial, and then following up at a second injection at 6 weeks. Then the women were brought back at 18 weeks and 22 weeks for evaluation. The primary endpoint, again, looking at safety and safety and tolerability, but from an efficacy standpoint, we did have investigators look at photographic evidence, also looking at a variety of other parameters to be able to assess the hair growth with respect to baseline and the 2 time points. There was also an independent panel of readers that are looking at the photographs as well. And so we'll be able to make those comparisons as we wind down the analysis of the data. Unfortunately, we don't have that analysis completed yet. We just finished the trial and just locked the database. I can say with clarity that it's safe and well tolerated, and we think what we'll learn from this particular trial in women will help to inform us as we move forward in our next phase of clinical development for this product, which will be a phase 2 trial in men.
Great, and I guess just with respect to that, I mean, how would you contrast just the application of the product and the mechanism, the mechanistic approach that you're taking in women and men? I mean, would you expect differences there, or is it going to be pretty seamless, I guess, the correlation between the two?
I'll take that.
Sure.
The differences are not just women and men, but the type of alopecia, lots
Yeah.
of different types of alopecia. So we know that our product works very effectively when you have miniaturized hair follicles. So basically vellus hair or just loss of vellus hair completely, but the follicle is still alive. Because the mechanism of the growth factors is then to be able to stimulate the follicle stem cells and start the whole anagen cycle again. And that's what our growth factors are set out to do. In women, if in fact it's a miniaturized follicle that's caused by something like shock or heat, women do great things to their hair to try to straighten it and dye it and whatever else, then it really is still alive, the same kind of mechanism. But if in women or men it's an autoimmune disease like alopecia areata or a scar disease in the scalp such as cicatricial alopecia, we're really not set out to target that area right now.
Okay, great. And I know there's just a few minutes left, so maybe could you just touch on IP, I guess? So what's protected in this process? Is it the manufacturing? Is it the final product? Is it all of the above?
We have a series of issued patents both in the U.S. and worldwide with many pending. So what is protected is the composition, both soluble and insoluble, made by these hypoxia-induced stem cells, the stem cells themselves, and then use of the composition for a variety of areas. Hair growth is separate, wound healing and soft tissue is separately, aesthetics is separate, orthopedics and hard tissue with separate patents, and then we have recent patents for things like eyelashes and eyebrows and other aesthetic uses. and keep on going. It's exosome component, et cetera.
Great, okay. So maybe just to wrap up, and I know you mentioned a lot of this obviously throughout your comments and in the Q&A, but just key milestones upcoming for the business.
Yeah,
in the
sure.
next 12 to 18
This
months.
is a pivotal year for the company as we think about the future. As in the immediate second and third quarter time frame, we'll continue to wrap up our data analysis of the phase 1 study with HSC 660. We will be obtaining regulatory guidance, we think, in the second quarter that will allow us to move into a phase 2 program there. We will certainly be expanding and or creating new relationships for our CCM product in the aesthetics market. We think that's a great way to fund the company from a non-dilutive perspective and continue to validate. And alongside that, we'll have to continue to expand and scale up our manufacturing process, both internally and externally through third parties. All of which we think will allow us to move the company forward on all fronts. Finally, on the ECM side of the equation, we will look to name a target, a first indication on the therapeutic side with ECM. And I think we have a number of opportunities there to explore more fully. But clearly, whether it's cartilage, bone, or wound healing, or more than one of those, we feel that creates an attractive opportunity for our shareholders today and those that we hope to attract to the company in the future. So with that, Steve, audience, and the conference, thank you very much.
Thank you both very much.